Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here. So, I finally finished Spare. You might think that's taken me quite a while. It's true, because I have ADHD, I either read something all in one go at once, or it takes me ages, and I read a bit every day. But I wanted to really, get really into this, and I've annotated it, I'll just show you. This probably seems like some sort of heresy to some people. I was an English lit student, so all my books are really annotated. If there's a book I really love, sometimes I have 2 copies of it, and one's annotated and one's precious on the shelf. But yeah, so I finished reading this, so I'm going to record for you a review that kind of sums up my thoughts on the whole book. That's not going to be this today because I want to take some time over that and pull out some quotes and that kind of thing. But yeah, so I finally finished that. But today's video is going to be a shorter one. I'll try and make it shorter. You know how my short videos end up. But this one's going to be about something which I've noticed happening to Harry having read the book, and it's about moving the goalposts. So if you don't know what that phrase means, you might have heard it with regards to abuse dynamics, because it's a common tactic that abusers employ to abuse somebody or to keep them as the scapegoat in their family system or in an oppressive system. So the basic definition of moving the goalposts, this is literally just from the Oxford Dictionary, is to unfairly alter the conditions or rules of a procedure during its course. So essentially it's being told that there are certain rules you have to follow, and this is how things work, and this is what makes you good, and this is what makes you bad, and this is what will get you celebrated, this is what will get you told off. But in an abusive system, the goalposts move. So if you're from a system like the royal family, where they need a scapegoat to operate, what we're seeing is a situation where every time, in this example, Harry tries to make people proud and to change his perception in the media and to try and make up for his wrongs, every time he does this, it's not good enough because they move the goalposts. So it's never quite enough. They want to keep him in a state of being the bad one, being the mad one, being the one that's off the rails. He is the go-to person that they need because they need all the negative stories to kind of focus on Harry, so that their principals in the family don't get the negative headlines. So you can see in that system, and again, I've said this so many times, but I'll keep saying it, it's not 100% the individuals in the family's fault because they're born into a system. They're not just a family deciding to do this. I'm not saying it's right that they allow one of their own to become the scapegoat. That in itself is really abusive. But what we can see in this situation is that it's not just about some normal abusive family and the reputation of the family. This is a family that's watched 24/7. So in terms of running themselves as trying to be a family, but also mascots and PR and representing Britain, they're trying to think like a business. So they're trying to think, right, we need a distraction whenever something really bad comes out about our principles, therefore we're going to use this person. And I won't get into another thing about why we don't need a royal family and why it's just bad for everybody here and why it's bad for everyone in the family. But that in itself, that abusive system that, Harry has said he wants a family, not an institution. The institution itself and the way it runs is actually blocking the individuals from being a normal family. If there was any hope of that, they're being groomed into a situation where they're kind of become these roles and the media plays a part in it. It is an exceptional situation where the media is taking part in the scapegoating. But in terms of Harry and the moving goalposts, so what you get the impression of when you're reading the book is somebody who is the scapegoat of their family system. So I don't know if I've made an actual video, maybe I should, about what that actually means to be a scapegoat in the family system. But let's just say for brevity, what that basically means is that you're kind of used by an abusive family or an abusive system as a sort of distraction or as a reason. When something bad comes out about the family, they can then point at their scapegoat and say that person's the problem. And that's really abusive because often the person who's chosen as the scapegoat will often start behaving in certain ways which aren't great, and they'll kind of lash out or they'll develop really unhealthy coping mechanisms because they've been scapegoated, because they're being emotionally abused. And the outcome of that means they start to develop these really unhealthy coping mechanisms, and so it makes them look like the villain. So then when the family turn on that person, they can say, look, so for example with Harry, look, Harry's the troubled one, look, he's doing all this bad stuff, he's taking drugs. And that's Darvo, because what you're actually seeing is somebody who's traumatized, who's been made the scapegoat in the family system, who's been made to feel they're worthless, who's been discouraged from getting therapy, who is then trying to medicate himself by using drugs, and he's going about it in all the wrong ways. And when you read the book, you really do feel sympathy, because Harry is very reflective, and I'm not sure the people that are calling him narcissistic have actually read the book, because what you're actually seeing is somebody trying to understand systems. This is how I know Harry is an abuse survivor of this sort of emotional abuse, because he's constantly trying to understand the systems. He's not trying to act like his behaviours in his early life were things that are okay. He's very reflective about those. He's very understanding of where they came from and how he can't win. And in the book, I think he seems to come to a realization that in the system he's in, he can't win, because he has to be the scapegoat. That is the sacrifice in his family, right? In order to have a family, not an institution, although I don't really know if that's even possible in the royal family they've got, Harry has to play his role. But that inherent role means accepting abuse and mistreatment and being the family scapegoat. And that's like a contradiction in itself, because in a healthy family, that wouldn't be allowed to happen. But there's numerous examples in the book of how this system has worked for Harry, because he goes right the way back to, the book kind of starts when he's 12. So all these different situations. So Harry is raised as being the spare and the scapegoat. It's kind of well known that he just accepts it, which is sad in itself. That William needs the positive press. It's not William's. William also comes across like he's been a victim of this system, not to excuse his behaviour in adulthood, but when I was reading the book, I was really thinking about those two traumatised boys and how this system has messed them up. Like, it really has. It's really sad. They're certainly in different sorts of hell during their childhoods and their teen years, and as they become older adults. And that's something that's really sad, and I do want to make a video on more broadly, because in that system, unfortunately, you know, neither of them are able to cope with it doesn't seem, because who could cope with it? But William seems to have found safety in assimilating, even though that's actually cycling the abuse on. Harry is kind of fighting back against it more. He's more interested in dismantling the system, or at least understanding the system. So although Harry's getting a lot of pushback right now, ultimately he's probably going to have more freedom in his life, because he is kind of, it's horrible for him. The pushback has been abusive and he shouldn't have had to go through it. He is going to he's got free. He has essentially got free. It's like somebody that leaves a cult. Like, he's got free, he's suffered trauma, but he's out. You know, often a scapegoat, because they're badly treated and that's their role, in some ways it can be easier to get out. With a golden child, which is a video I'll make on another day, there is a different source of conditioning. And I do think we need to think about that with regards to William, because I'm not saying to excuse any adult behaviour, but I am saying that it's really too simplistic to just imagine that he's having a great time and, oh, you know, he was the golden child, it was a great thing for him. No, he was also abused and conditioned, it seems like. And the tragedy is that those brothers don't have a relationship, because the system has done what a lot of abusive systems do, and it's separated the siblings. And the reason that's been done is because the family has an interest in maintaining itself and maintaining the way it runs. So in assimilating William, they're maintaining that system. They've kept their scapegoat because Harry's gone, and now they can point at him from a distance and say, look, he was always bad, he's gone. But it seems that in every turn in Harry's life, he is made the scapegoat and he can't escape it. So when you're younger and you're made the scapegoat, I think you sometimes believe that, you know, you're made to believe you're the problem, and you think, well, if only I could do better and do things differently, then everything will be okay. And because you develop bad coping mechanisms and bad behaviours because you're being abused, people then turn that on you and say, look, that's why you're the scapegoat. It's a horrible cycle. But what you've got, for example, you know, let's look at the military. And I've made a video before on this. I'm very sceptical of war. I'm very sceptical of the military. But let's look at how Harry was raised. So Harry is raised to feel useless, worthless, and a spare. He's raised very much to think that his grandmother is two roles for him, both a grandmother and his sort of sovereign and his queen, and he needs to serve her, and the royal family is very tied to the military. So he's grown up thinking that, okay, the ultimate way to prove myself and become a hero and show that I am hardworking and show that I'm not this bad person that they all think I am and that the press thinks I am, I'm going to join the military. So that's what he thinks. And again, I've got my opinions on the military. I think you probably know them and you're probably tired of them. But that's Harry's mindset, because he's thinking, look, people in the past in the family have been applauded for being in the military, and I can finally show them that I'm not just talking about it. Like, I want to put myself out there, and I will go out and I will do it and I will do the training, and I will do that. Because he's being told that he's thick and he's immature and basically just mocked in the press. And how sick is it that they were doing that to a young adult anyway in the press? But he's told he's not responsible, you know, you're letting the side down. Now the trap is that I think Harry starts to realise, and which is so awful when you're reading it, is that they want Harry to let the side down. And that's a horrible realisation. His own family want him to let the side down and they need him to. And they are engineering it so that he does. Or the firm is, anyway. Because what this actually reveals is that they never actually wanted him to stop being the scapegoat, you know. They never actually had valid concerns about how he was behaving and wanted that for him. Because once he joins the military and he actually serves, what actually happens in the family is rather than him escaping the role, it gets twisted again. So people start to become uncomfortable because he's found some sort of success there, right? It makes other principals jealous. And this is how you know the goalposts have been moved. Because if they sincerely thought, oh, Harry's lazy, they'd be saying, oh, good on you, like, we're all so proud of you, like, you're obviously not, good for you, you know, you've gone out and you've done something. That's not what happened. So Harry goes through this whole process of going into the military, doing all that, the trauma that goes with that, and all he really gets is kind of envy, and it doesn't feel like he gets the appropriate praise that you would expect in that sort of family who are so pro-military. It seems to make, from Harry's perspective, it seems to make William insecure, because William's starting to think, oh my god, Harry can't succeed at something. If Harry succeeds, the family system needs a new scapegoat. And everyone's scared of being that scapegoat. You know, it's the same in normal dysfunction dynamics or oppressive dynamics, right? Everyone is afraid of being the scapegoat. And the reason that the scapegoat is treated in such a way is a threat to every single other person in the system. Because no one wants it to be them. No one wants it to be them. So after he's gone to the military, and I would argue he's actually in some ways been groomed in, because there's not a lot of things that Harry was able to do. Harry has said when he was younger he wanted to lead safaris and things like that. He travels to Africa and he has an interest in that kind of thing. Everything he wants to do like a normal person would do, he can't do because of security concerns or because of what's expected. It's like a pipeline for him that leads him through to the military. Then when that's done, the reaction from the family isn't, well done Harry, you're no longer the scapegoat. He realises he could never win because they're actually like, do you know what, don't outshine anyone, just like keep it to yourself. And it's not as obvious as that, you know, they're not directly saying to him, don't be proud of yourself. But the vibe I got from reading it, and which I recognised, was very much, okay, but don't get above yourself. Like, you haven't stopped being the scapegoat yet. Like, we'll get you for something else. Because it moves. The goalposts move. And if you look at this in the papers, for example, and I said this in my video about the military, etc., these are papers who regularly support the wars in the Middle East, like Iraq, Afghanistan, right? They regularly dehumanise Muslims. They are very, very pro-veterans and pro the military to like a really extreme degree. But then when Harry talks about his actual experiences in the military, and he talks about those things which he's actually been told and which these publications support, suddenly they turn on him and they say, actually, you're still bad because now you are turning on the military, right? You're turning on them, you're still bad. They also suddenly decide that killing people is bad. It's fine to do it, but don't discuss it. Which is another issue which I do get into in my other video, which is how we groom and indoctrinate soldiers, young people, often from working class backgrounds. Harry even says in the book that the army specifically looks for people who don't come from particularly happy backgrounds, right? It's somewhere where people go to find brotherhood and meaning and to feel worth something. But the goalposts move for him again, because by these papers' standards, he should be a hero by their own standards, right? If it was anybody else, can you imagine if it was William, right? How huge this would be in the papers, how amazing it would be. They've now turned on him and they've said, actually, you're betraying the military, you shouldn't have done that, actually it's all bad. So the rules and the requirements have completely changed, because it was, Harry's lazy, he's a party boy, he's this, he's that. Okay, I'll join the military. Harry joins the military. Oh, actually, you're talking about it wrong. You shouldn't be talking about it. And actually, maybe there's something wrong with him. Like, you know my thoughts about the military, you know my thoughts about the dehumanization of people and how we go to conflict without diplomacy, and there's a lot of things at play, especially when it came to Afghanistan and Iraq. There's so much there. But in terms of the goalpost shifting for Harry, do you see how that's moved? It moved with his family and it moved with the press. He has to be their scapegoat. Right, so let's look at Meghan and the marriage. So this is a really interesting thing that I found when reading the book through. There's a lot of requirements that Harry's partner has to fulfill, right? And even reading that, I was thinking how incredibly abusive it was. Because it's not, if you believe in humanity and human rights, you should not believe in the monarchy. It should not be that anyone is having to think about their partner in terms of what the rest of the world will make of that partner. It should be about love and kindness and how healthy your relationship is and how it makes you feel. And it should be about you and your family. That's a very personal thing in your life if you choose to have a family. But this doesn't belong to Harry. It also doesn't belong to William, and it didn't belong to Charles either. And in the book, there are all these sections where red flags the whole time, and it's like, I don't even know if Harry even realises, like, writing it, how awful it sounds. The fact that he really, like, if he struggles to get in a relationship because who's going to put up with him, right? Who's going to deal with that press attention? To be with him means that that person's going to get harassed and it's going to ruin their life. And it kind of, it really makes things very difficult for him. And there are people he has very genuine feelings for that just can't cope with it. So he suffers this kind of heartbreak and this kind of loss. And he's always, deep down, he expresses the fact that he really wants a family. But these things are in the way for him. And I'm sorry, it is completely mad and wrong that any of these adults, like, they have to think, oh, will my grandmother be all right with it? Will my dad be all right with it? You know, the idea of a grown man having to choose somebody that, oh, their family accepts. I don't know, I think it triggers me because of, like, LGBT stuff. I just feel really strongly about that. You know, in a lot of families, it's less about the child being happy and in love. And creating their own happy family, right? It's more about them marrying someone that makes the family look good, right? So it becomes like judging people based on how much money they have or where they come from, etc. And all that stuff to me is just ridiculous and the opposite of what it means to be in love. But Harry's grown up having to think about this because who he marries isn't even his own business. His body isn't his own body. His family isn't his own family. It belongs to Britain, right? He's got to perform for Britain. He's got to choose somebody not just for him, but for them. So the requirements of the family and the press, and he talks about that in the book. So I've written some of them down, and I'm paraphrasing here, but these are the kind of rough things that he's looking for. He needs someone that's, like, switched on, that's graceful and elegant. He needs someone that's a decent speaker, someone that's okay in front of cameras. He needs someone that's confident and that's resilient, likeable, beautiful, willing to learn, eager to do humanitarian work. They have to have the ability to handle engagements. They need to have a positive attitude. They need to be someone who can travel, who works hard, who's understanding, who's quick thinking. He needs to find somebody with all these qualities who also loves him enough that they can put up with the fact that they are going to be harassed, stalked, and abused by the press. Their every move is going to be watched. They're not necessarily going to be the owners of their own children. I hesitate with the word owners. I don't think parents own their children, but in terms of the decisions that they make about their children are very much, it becomes a conversation about Britain, right? If you look at George and Charlotte and Louis, for example, look at how the press feel like they're entitled to those children, right? They feel like they are Britain's children. George is being groomed in to become a mascot. And because of that, it's like some people think they have a right to his life. And again, there's still time. Like, honestly, just this is kind of going slightly off topic, but I think if Charles wants to do something right here, like genuinely get some things right, which have been wrong in the past, if he can be the one to end this, then he is going to be freeing his son, he's going to be freeing George, he's going to be freeing all those future generations. I will have a video which is about William's specific situation that he's in right now. But I honestly think the best thing that Charles could possibly do as a father is to break the system now. Break the system now so William doesn't have to be the one to do it, so George doesn't have to be the one to do it. Just end the cycles of pain. And this is one of those things that I think I disagree with Harry on, and that I also have a video coming on, which is the fact that he's still pro-monarchy. I understand that's hard for him because to him monarchy is family, right? His grandmother, who he loves, is the monarch. To be anti-monarchy would feel like it would mean there's no chance of a relationship with his dad and his brother, because this is why it's so toxic that the family institution are mixed anyway, because it can't be that you disagree with the institution and still have a connection with your family. I see a lot of leanings in Harry which seem to be very understanding of oppressive systems, curious, wanting to figure them out, to look at his own place in them. I can see him going on to take an anti-monarchist position in the future. I understand that's hard for him. He's not there yet. But going back to the expectations for his partner, you know, in the book, Harry is constantly thinking he's sad because he wants a family. He wants to find love. Obviously, he's been a scapegoat in his family system. There hasn't been, I won't say there's not love from what he's describing, but it's not the sort of affectionate, demonstrative, like, warm love that it seems Harry craves, which is very much like his mum, he's once again beating himself up because he's saying, why aren't I married? Like, why won't I find someone? Like, maybe I won't. Maybe no one will put up with it. Maybe no one will put up with me. And that's depressing for him to have in the back of his mind. And no human being should be having to do that. Can you imagine if you were choosing your partner, but you also had to make everybody else in the country, like it was like a PR thing, because you also had to make everyone in the country like them. Anyway, and let's not get into how, like, bad and racist that is anyway, because if you're thinking along those lines, or what will people think, you know, what happens, I've thought this before, what happens if, for example, let's say George is gay. I'm not saying that he is, but like, imagine if he was. I'm sure there have been lots of people in the royal family who probably have been LGBT but haven't been able to speak about it. Because it's not his life, because who he then chooses becomes part of Britain, it becomes part of a debate. It becomes something that has to be changed. If say there's a gay member of that family, their very identity will make them a target, right? And they're being told, oh, you've got to do what the press wants, you've got to do what tradition dictates, you've got to get people on side. I just think that must be horrifying. Like, imagine if one of those children was gay. The moment you're expecting someone to choose their partner for what a load of, let's be honest, bigoted monarchists think is acceptable, right? You're boxing that person, right? And you're making somebody have to deny parts of themselves when it comes to that very personal act of just finding love. So Harry then finds Meghan, and it's like an absolute miracle because she fulfills these, because Meghan is, you know, she's bright, she's sparky, she's good on the spot, she's very articulate, she's intelligent, she's good at speaking to crowds. Because she's an actor, she's used to a certain amount of press interest. I don't think Meghan ever had any idea of how bad it would get, and I think that also shows in the fact that, you know, Harry's girlfriends that have been from Britain or more aware of that have often kind of backed away from it. You know, they've thought, I can't deal with that. I think that's why it happened that Meghan is from kind of across the pond. I think there's not such an understanding of like how intense that stuff is and how that's not something you really want to step into. So Harry's really excited because he's found someone that literally, it fills all of the specifications. It's like a miracle. There's no danger that Meghan's gonna, you know, let anyone down. She carries herself well, she's elegant, she's stylish, she's beautiful, she's all those things. She's so good at talking in public, she's charismatic, she's willing to learn, she's emotionally intelligent, she seems aware of her own emotions and what's healthy and what's not healthy. In terms of those specifications, Meghan could not have been more perfect. Like, for thinking of the royal family as a brand, Meghan could not have been more perfect. So Harry has factors in. I'm not undermining the love he has for Meghan at all. I think that's very clear. But in choosing his partner, I think Harry has factored in all of these things. He knows he's not just choosing for him, he's choosing for everyone. And there's a sense that he's just really excited for people to meet her, because he thinks there's no way people aren't gonna like her. She's everything that people want, and I love her to bits. But what starts to happen when Harry reveals that he's found this girl that's perfect and that he really loves? So what starts to happen is the same jealousy and envy and spite comes out. And I think Harry starts to realise that, again, the goalposts are moving, because he could not have picked anyone more perfect. So remember that when the goalposts move, like, the expectations and the requirements, they keep getting expanded, so that the victim is constantly trying to prove themselves and jump through hoops to show that they're not bad and they're not a scapegoat and they actually don't deserve to be treated in that way. It wastes their time and gives power to other people in the system. When you are a scapegoat, the trick is that the expectations they set you can never be met, because when you meet them, like with the military, like with finding Meghan, it will change again and become more difficult. There'll be something else that's wrong. They will never be satisfied, because you have to be the scapegoat and that is your role. And if you stop playing that role, they're going to try and bring you back down into it. So what we see from Harry's perspective in the book is that people are kind of finding things wrong with Meghan, right? And there's definitely jealousy involved here, because they wanted him to find this perfect person that Harry thinks is going to mix with William and Kate, and that the four of them can become closer and be part of the royal family brand together. But he slowly starts to realise that this too is wrong. This is wrong because his role is to be the scapegoat. And in choosing somebody perfect like he was supposed to do, there is a danger that he's going to outshine others in the family. And this is the same thing that happened with Diana. She couldn't do anything right. She was in an abusive system because she had expectations. She was young and she wanted to feel them. So she tried to do everything right. She learned, she tried to adapt. And then when she did it right, when she managed to do it right and she was doing it so right that people loved her, she was once again wrong. The goalpost moved because she was getting more attention than Charles, right? She was in the wrong because she'd done everything they wanted and done everything right. The scapegoat can't win, that's their role in the system. There was never a way that Harry was going to win in this system. There's a part in the book where William says something about, you know, Harry, if you don't ever find someone, you don't have a family, you know, that's fine, it's okay. And there's genuine sort of care coming from William there. I definitely think their dynamic has been messed up by the system. There also does seem to be an understanding with William, you know, with the golden child scapegoat thing, that yeah, I want you to thrive, Harry, but I don't want you to thrive more than me. You can't thrive more than me, you still need to be the scapegoat, okay? So yeah, I support you in being happy, but don't be too happy. I support you in finding the person we want you to find, but don't let her be too perfect. That is the trick, because in these systems, the only time the scapegoat is allowed to truly succeed is when it's something that reflects well on the family and can be used by the family. So what you'll often see in these dynamics, not just in the royal family, but in normal family dynamics, or in an abusive romantic relationship, is that if you've achieved something which can reflect well on everybody else, you might find yourself heavily praised, right? It's something that people can brag about, they can share in, they can say is part of their brilliance, right? You're an extension of them, therefore what you've done reflects well on them. But if you achieve something on your own, right, so this is something you do off your own back, something that doesn't really have other people's input, you might notice that rather than being praised, you're actually diminished and made to feel really insecure about it, because it's not something that can be connected to the family or to your abuser, right? It's not something they can claim. They can't have you succeeding on your own. If they're not a part of it, they're not interested, and in fact they're jealous and they want to stop it. All this time, you know, in a sense of the book, Harry was mocked for not having a partner. You know, and in the family it's like, maybe he won't find a partner, you know, maybe he's the scapegoat, and maybe that's the point, maybe he's just the backup act, maybe he's just going to be like a single uncle to the next generation of kids, and that's fine. And then when he does what they want, when he falls in love, when he brings someone in who he thinks is going to be absolutely perfect for them, he's too in love. He's too in love. There's problems with him, the way he's expressing his love. There's problems on their love, showing up other people's love. And then they start trying to find problems with Meghan. And I think that's twofold, really. I think there's envy and jealousy, of course, in a system like this, because Meghan is very aware of her feelings, very aware of her opinions, and very good at articulating them. I think that creates a certain amount of jealousy in the principals, which again, in a normal family wouldn't need to create jealousy. They would have in fact thought, I'm not a royalist, I would be glad if the whole thing falls to bits. But in their interest, you know, wanting to keep this thing going, if they could get past these feelings of envy and this horrible system, you would think, great, let's use Meghan, right? She is a brilliant ambassador for this brand, let's use her. But there's also an element of wanting Harry to remain the scapegoat. Now, the threat of Meghan coming in is that Meghan is giving Harry a lot of help, right? She's encouraging him to do therapy, to become more healthy, to examine systems, because she's bright. So she's doing all these things and she's giving him emotional support. The real threat here is, and the reason that they needed to kind of stop this relationship, or try to, is that Harry cannot start to understand that he's the scapegoat of the system and that he can't win. Because I would say Harry comes across in the book as, in some ways, when he's younger, quite naive. In terms of wanting to think the best of people and not wanting to imagine that actually the system runs in a way that means he can't win, and that's the point. He doesn't really want to believe it of people. He empathizes heavily with other people in the system. Now, that family needs Harry to be their scapegoat. And with Meghan, there's a threat that Harry's not going to be the scapegoat anymore. He no longer has a function to them. If he's not lesser than them, if he's not the one the tabloids can pick at, then what are they going to do? Because it's not a healthy family where they're rooting for his happiness and his success, is it? And it's not to say they don't love him in their way, but the way that they're doing it is all wrong, because I think they're also traumatized from the system and they're so competitive. They only love him when he's below them. They only love him when he's lesser than them. That's the contract. And I feel like the process of this book is Harry realising that, actually, no, I'm not lesser than any of you. I'm not more either. I am equal to you. That seems to be the story of the book. It seems to be someone who's played the game, and every single time he's tried to please them, the goalposts have just moved. This is not somebody that has been trying to tear this thing down. They're now trying to present him as someone who does want to tear this thing down. I wish he would want to tear the thing down, frankly, but I don't think he's there. But he's not. This is someone who's tried to work within the system, and it's the same with Diana. Diana tried to work within it. The goalposts kept moving. And then she realised there's no way for me to win. And then when she expressed that, she's treated as if she's trying to like ruin the whole thing and break the whole thing apart. The book basically shows you that this is not somebody that grew up thinking, I'm gonna, you know, destroy this whole thing and that's why I'm gonna do it. This is the story of a little boy who was brought up as a scapegoat in the most awful abusive situations, who constantly tried to please, cracked under the pressure and acted out in ways that then made it easier for people to attack him and scapegoat him. He's just constantly trying to find his own worth, trying to please people. He's desperately trying to make people proud and be noble and find what he's meant to do. And then he gets to a point as an adult when he realised that even when he's doing that, it's not good enough because it was always rigged. He was always meant to be the spare. He was always meant to be the scapegoat. That was his role in the family. The love in that family, his part in that family is dependent on him being the spare. And that's why it's called Spare. You know, people have said, oh, it's about resentfulness. I'd be fine if it was about resentfulness. It's not. This is about a scapegoat who realises that the goalposts keep on moving, and he's now got to a point where he's thought, you know what, I'm no longer going to try and meet the expectations. I'm no longer going to try and please you because there's no way that you will be pleased. I understand now that there's nothing I can do to stop being the spare in your eyes, in the family dynamic and in the family situation. He's basically saying, I'm not going to jump through the hoops because every time I do, there's more. There's more obstacles because the whole point is to exhaust me and to make me feel like I've got no self-esteem and to make me feel like I'm nothing. You need me to be that role to raise you guys up. And he's saying, I'm not going to do that anymore. Even now you're seeing the media try to do the same thing to him. And I think part of the reason why he is able to withstand it so much is because he's dealt with it in the family system. So, for example, when he's talking about, racial bias, for example, or the way the families run, or things that have happened in the family which aren't very healthy, you know, it's like, give us evidence. So he gives evidence, and then it's give us more evidence, and then he gives more evidence. And we can look back and we can say, no, this is something Diana called out. This is something other people have called out. This is something we all know is happening. But they'll keep saying, no, give us more evidence, give us more evidence, because there's never enough evidence. That's the point. It's like in his family system. You know, that's why when people say, that's why when people like, for example, Charles and William think you play along with the abusive system and the abusive tabloids, that's why that's flawed logic. Because they maybe don't understand this because they have not been the spare. They've not been the scapegoat. By the fact they're the oldest in their generations, they are the golden children. They are the ones that represent Britain, right? They haven't been in that situation where no matter what they try and do, they cannot win. Because their role is to fail. Their role is to be that one that is compared to the golden child, and everyone can say, wow, aren't we glad that we've got the golden child, because it could have been worse, it could have been the other one. And that's the function of the spare. That's the function. So yeah, this actually ended up longer than I thought it was going to be. Hope it was helpful. Let me know if there's anything you want me to talk about. I'm going to do a review of the book in general. So yeah. I love you loads, and I'll see you really soon. Bye!